Welcome to this episode of Conversation with Our Professional Partners. And Dale Thomas, attorney here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, has volunteered to give you guys some information. And one of the things that we're going to ask him about is tips. We would like to see if you have 5 tips, whether they're for buyers or for sellers, in order to help to make sure that the transaction goes smoothly. So Dale, tell us some tips that can help our audience.
Okay, I'll start with some tips for the sellers. So, first thing with sellers is, it's important that they have a good realtor in their corner because, oftentimes surprises pop up.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know one thing in particular are liens that they may not realize are against their property. So, during the subprime collapse and some of the other turbulent times in the economy, there were HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development. There were loans that they were giving out to help folks that were struggling. The HAMP or HART program, some people will remember, where basically, if you're in distress, they would give you funds to get caught up on your mortgage, and then you'd be back in good standing. What a lot of people didn't understand, and we see this quite regularly, is that while the government was giving out those funds, some of them have to be repaid. So they're what we call silent seconds.
Okay.
So they sit as a lien against your property until that time where you sell your property or refinance your property or otherwise dispose of your property. So at that point, that whole amount becomes due. So you have sellers sometimes that will, with their realtor, they'll go through their balance sheet and they'll say, okay, I owe this much, these are the closing costs, these are the realtor's commissions. They don't take into account that they have this lien. I've seen them as high as $80,000-$90,000 sitting over here just silently waiting to be paid off. And so we get to be the bearers of bad news because we send over the closing statement before closing for review, and they're like, wait a second, why is it that I now owe money instead of receiving money at closing? And we have to break the news to them. You remember back in 2015 or 16 when you were in distress and you had the Secretary of HUD step in to help you get caught up? That money wasn't free money. So you've got to pay that back now. So, staying on top of things. And I know, most realtors these days will do the, analysis and do a cost sheet before they list a property. So just being aware of those hidden additional fees or costs or liens that may be attached to their property, so that they don't walk in blindly.
Okay.
Yeah. Another tip.
That's a great tip, by the way.
Another tip for sellers is to keep documentation of everything, because another thing that happens on the seller side, and these are things that can kind of delay closing, is when a seller has, owned a property for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they have a mortgage from ABC Mortgage from back in 1999 that they paid off in 2005 when they refinanced. But for some reason, ABC Mortgage did not cancel out that deed of trust at the Register of Deeds. So now when we, as the attorney, look at the chain of title, if that lien hasn't been canceled or satisfied or released or otherwise released, it still counts as a lease when it comes in the title world. We still look at it as a valid lien, so to speak, until it's been properly satisfied. So that will cause a delay, and it's not something that we can always get around, and it's not something that we can always solve quickly. But any additional documentation that they may have from when they got that letter from that lender saying, hey, we paid it off, thank you, congratulations, your loan is paid off. That additional evidence sometimes can help us when we interact with the title company or with that particular lender to say, hey, this is what happened, they paid it off, it's just not recorded. And so that will help us to kind of get it rectified a little bit sooner. So keep records of anything related to past loans and things like that. I'm not saying you have to keep full loan packages, because that can be a lot. You're talking 100, 200 pages worth of documents at times, but those important little trailing documents that you get.
Well, so guys, don't burn that. You know how you hear about the mortgage burning or whatever? Don't burn off your receipt. Okay,
Exactly.
that's a receipt.
Yeah.
Totally different than the
Keep your
mortgage. Yeah,
receipts.
keep your receipts
Yeah.
because we
You
don't
can
want
burn the
that. I
mortgage,
know.
but yeah, but keep receipts saying that the mortgage doesn't exist anymore.
Right, right,
Yes.
right.
On the buyer side, the biggest thing I think that lenders will tell clients, and I've seen it come back to bite clients and delay closings, is do not open new lines of credit or go buy things during your closing process without either seeking permission from your lender, but without seeking permission from your lender, period. Yeah. So, because I've had situations where folks, are coming to closing and then they buy a car a month before closing or a couple weeks before closing
Or the day of.
or the day of
Mhm.
closing, thinking, "Hey, it's a done deal." No, until you hear from that attorney that your deed is recorded, please don't buy anything. Yeah. Um, and also on the buyer side, I mean, patience, is a virtue in real estate. I mean, we all like for transactions to go quick and close on time, but sometimes there's just things outside of our control and the realtor's control and the lender's control that will delay closing. So don't box yourself in so tightly to being closed on one date. We've had situations where the closing gets delayed for whatever reason, but one time in particular, I had clients that had planned a wedding in the backyard 2 days after they bought the house, and the closing got delayed. So
Oh,
they're
my
looking at
goodness.
everybody like, "What are we supposed to do now?" And I'm like, "Who plans a wedding on something that's not guaranteed?" So until it's closed, it's not guaranteed. So yeah, just manage your expectations for closing and know that it's a moving target, and while it may seem like it's set in stone, it's not always truly set in stone.
Okay, great. Those are some great tips. Really appreciate giving those tips because they can help whether buyer or seller. If you have any of those kind of situations or something that's similar, that you want to make sure that you handle those in the appropriate fashion. And Dale, as always, we really do appreciate all that you do for our business because you're one of our partners, and also for our audience in order to help them to be educated about the closing process. Until next time.
All right.
We'll see you then.
Guys.
Okay, thank you.